Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Carrying on with the season preview series today, we will be focusing on the Detroit Lions. Apologies for the darkness of the video, there have been some issues recording today, so here we are a little bit later than usual. And an apology for a mistake in yesterday's episode. I did not mention the player Jarrell Freeman, who is highly likely to be a starting linebacker for the Bears. That's my bad, I simply missed out on that one. So, for those of you who haven't seen, I'll be going through those projected starters if the Lions were to play a game tomorrow, barring one exception, which I will mention. This is how I suspect the team would line up. I'll then go through the projected record that I've got for the team and give a brief outlook on their schedule from my perspective. And then I will give my 3 X factors in the upcoming season. Now, I've been on record and I stand by it that the Lions overachieved last year. In order for them to have similar results or possibly exceed them, I think these 3 key areas will play a very important role in that being a possibility. So, on with the projected offensive starters. At quarterback, got a nice simple one. Matthew Stafford coming off what is, in my opinion, the best season of his career. Even if it didn't show statistically, he's going to be the star. Thought he was very, very solid for them. Cut down on mistakes. Elevated the team with his play and allowed them to win a lot of close games. Running back, I think we'll see Amir Abdullah and Theo Riddick handling the majority of the workload. Abdullah just needs to show that he can stay healthy and be an every down back. Zach Zenner didn't show much last year, so I think Riddick will get that secondary job. He can contribute in the passing game. At receiver, Golden Tate and Marvin Jones will reprise their 1 and 2 roles respectively. I think from what I've heard, Kenny Galladay seems to be the leader for the third receiver role, vacated by Anquan Boldin. I wouldn't be shocked if Boldin came back. I do think he was an asset to this team last year. As things stand, I think this spot is certainly open, but I'm going with Galladay at this point in time. At tight end, Eric Ebron, still waiting for him to break out, but he'll be the starter. I think Darren Fells will be used primarily as a blocking tight end. At offensive tackle, one of the exceptions I talked about, Taylor Decker will be the starter. However, he is going to miss a chunk of the season. Ricky Wagner was signed from Baltimore. He'll be the starting right tackle. This is a very good pair. At guard, Laken Tomlinson maybe hadn't lived up to my expectations for him yet, but there's still time. TJ Lang was a great player for a long time for the Packers. He should continue to be a solid player. Travis Swanson will be playing at centre. He's a fine centre. And the kicker, Matt Prater. He's been a good kicker for a while. No reason to change that there. This group is probably better than I would normally give them credit for when I've sort of broke it all down. The issue I've got is that Decker injury. I think this really harms this team. The line, they clearly made an effort in the Wagner and Lang signings to improve this group. Unfortunately, they've lost possibly their best lineman for a large chunk of the season. The running backs have been a problem for a while. Abdullah just needs to stay healthy. There's no real game breakers in the passing game, but they're all reasonably solid players. I think this group, it is fine. They'll go as far as Stafford takes them, frankly. Definitely the most balanced and highest quality offense that we've looked at so far. If they can avoid tanking with Decker out and the running backs can perform, I think this has the potential to be a pretty good group, but we are relying, I think, on Stafford balling once again this season. Otherwise, I suspect a middle of the road kind of offense. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. At defensive end, I figure we're going to see, Ziggy Ansah's a given, and I think Kerry Hyder will get the other starting role. He played pretty well last year. I'm not sure if he's necessarily asset against the run, but they do need a pass rusher. The defensive tackles in Haloti Ngata and Sean Robinson, they don't offer much pass rush, but they are both fairly decent run players. Unfortunately, Ngata not the player he once was at this stage in his career. Definitely going to need to get some pass rush from the other players in the interior, I would feel. At linebacker, this group I think is pretty fluid. I've got Jared Davis currently listed as an outside backer because I just feel they'll want him in the DeAndre Levy role. Levy, when he was healthy a couple of years ago, was their playmaker at that spot. Davis, of course, being a first-round pick, that would make a lot of sense to me. Also, I think Warrilow is not going to be great in coverage against tight ends. I think playing him in a sort of zonal scheme, allowing him to play in the middle and play against the run is probably the best bet for him. And I think you can sub him out and use both Whitehead and Davis on passing downs. So this is the way I would line them up, with that little caveat of Warrilow coming out on passing downs. What they end up doing, I'm not so sure. I'm pretty sure it's the three. What their positions end up being, we'll see after training camp. In the secondary, Darius Slay, one of the better corners in the league, finally starting to get some of the credit that he deserves. I like Jalen Table more than most. I think he could be very productive as a slot corner. My issues with him in college were playing the deep ball. If you play him in the slot, I don't think he'll necessarily have that issue as much. Play him zonally, keep things in front of him. That's where I think he can do his best work. Nevin Lawson I've got currently as the number 2. A bit behind Slay. I think these spots are all wide open, and we'll see how things shake up. At safety, apologise for the typo, but Glover Quinn, a solid veteran player at this point in his career, and I think Tavon Wilson gets the start next to him because they will need that experience. And at punter, Sam Martin. This group concerns me in a few ways. The linebacker position, pretty much a new group. They're going to need to gel quickly. I worry about how much pass rush that front four is going to generate on a consistent basis, and I worry a little about that secondary. There's no gaping holes necessarily, but I don't think there's much depth. I think they're relying on their star players playing like stars. Otherwise, I think this group is going to be pretty soft. I think if there's a weakness across this roster, it's definitely just the lack of overall talent on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm expecting this to be a below average unit over the course of the season. Now, in terms of last year, of course, the Lions snuck into the playoffs with a 9-7 record. This year, I'm projecting them to go 7-9. I think they got the rub of the green, as they say, quite often last year, pulling out games late in some bizarre fashion at times. I don't think all those close games are necessarily going to go their way this year. I don't think they're as talented as some of the other teams at the top of the NFC. In terms of their schedule, I'm not sure it's great for them. I think they've got a really tough start, and missing Taylor Decker is going to be a big deal for a lot of those games. The Cardinals, I feel that's a game that could go either way. The Giants is a tough one. Then the Falcons, that's tough. The Vikings, I think the Vikings are a better team than the Lions at this point. I think that's going to be difficult. The Panthers, the Saints, the Steelers, and then the Packers. It's not inconceivable to me that this team, only wins 2 of those games. The second half of the schedule is a little bit more pleasant. You've got the Browns, the Bears. I think the Ravens and Bengals are both beatable in that time frame. The Bears twice. So that's where I think this team can pick up some wins, and that should also be when Decker gets back into the lineup. So I think they can be a bit more productive from there on out. They're going to have to start quickly. That's a fairly tough early schedule. I just can't see them getting through it, missing their best offensive lineman, and with the defense having to come together early in the year, particularly at the linebacker spot. Linebackers, when linebackers struggle, the rest of the defense has to try and make up for it. They're kind of the engine room a lot of the time. So we'll see how things go, but I do expect a slight drop off this year, even if I think the roster is better than it was heading into last season. For the team to achieve what they did last year, as I mentioned, there's 3 key areas if they're going to reach the playoffs or advance deeper into them. I think this is what's going to have to happen. Looking at the run game, first and foremost, it was non-existent last season. Abdullah has had injury problems. I like him as a player. He needs to stay healthy, show he can be an every down back, contribute in both phases of the game. The passers struggled last year. Teams were able to just sit back in coverage as the run offered no threat. That has to change. The defensive tackles, I think they're going to have to produce some pass rush. They can't just rely on the pair of defensive ends, even though I think they're both good players. I'm not sure where that's going to come from when I look at this group, but this front four in general is going to have to play pretty well. I think they're pretty thin in terms of coverage. And the linebackers behind them, they're going to have to gel quickly, adapt to the scheme. You've got a rookie there. You've got Warlow, who's not a great coverage player. They're going to have to be successful again to cover up some of them holes. And there were some issues stopping the run at times last year. They're going to have to play well. As I say, you can't just rely on Answer and Slay to make all of the splash plays. Some other players are going to have to step up in that front seven for this team to have some success. So there you have it. That's my season preview for the Detroit Lions. What do you guys think? As ever, get in touch. Let me know if there's any players you're keeping an eye on, anything you agree, disagree with, your thoughts in general. Whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page, find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football. As ever, if you've enjoyed it, check out more of the show. Covered the Bears yesterday, division rival. Did 4 episodes last week. Got the Cowboys and Colts coming up. Going to cover all 32 teams. Should be a weekly review this Friday. Depends how much news there is. I didn't do one last Friday because there was really nothing to cover. If you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that stuff, that's greatly appreciated as well. Really do appreciate you guys watching. It's greatly appreciated. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening and go Bucks.